seconds here.
This meeting is being recorded.
Great. Go ahead and get started.
We're all set?
All set.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. This meeting is being live streamed. Again, press 6 on your phones if you are calling in to mute or unmute yourself. As permitted by the governor's disaster declaration dated Friday, February 3rd, the determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent to this board. To ensure a transparent and open meeting as possible, the meeting materials will be posted approximately 1 week in advance. A recording of this meeting will be provided and linked on our website, and all votes to be taken by roll call. Aaron, you want to call a roll, please?
Thank you. Mayor Bennett,
Present.
Frank Beal,
Present.
Holly, Mayor Darch,
Here.
Paul Goodrich,
Here.
Jim Healy,
Present.
Nina Itamudia.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Noak,
Here.
President Reinbold,
Here.
Mayor Rodering,
Here.
Stephen Schaefer,
Here.
Carolyn Schofield,
Here.
Ann Sheehan,
Here.
Matt Walsh, Diane Williams,
Present.
Leanne Redden. Sorry, non-voting
I'm
members here. Leanne Redden,
She was on.
and then Dr. Kuros Mohammadian.
Sorry, I think I was muted on here.
Thank you, Leanne. Great, we have a quorum.
Yes, we do have a quorum, and before you are the minutes of our previous meeting, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved, Sheehan.
Second,
Seconded.
Rotary.
Moved and seconded. Aaron, call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett,
Aye.
Frank Beal,
Aye.
President Brawley, Mayor Darch,
Aye.
Paul Goodrich,
Yes.
Jim Healy,
Aye.
Nina Itamudia, Mayor Noak.
Aye.
Aye. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Aye.
I got you, Nina. Thank you, Mayor Noak. President Reinbold,
Yes.
Mayor Rodering,
Aye.
Stephen Schaefer,
Aye.
Carolyn Schofield,
Aye.
Ann Sheehan,
Aye.
Matt Walsh, Diane Williams.
Yes.
And the motion carries. First item on the agenda is the executive director's report. Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. This morning I just wanted to start with condolences to our friends at the Civic Federation. I know many of us were, had worked with Lawrence Massall in the past, and we were saddened to hear of his unexpected passing this weekend. He was a remarkable man. We were thrilled to have his insights and perspectives as part of our plan of action for regional transit process. Always a champion of good government and fiscal accountability. I know he'll be sorely missed by us and the entire region. Moving on to some other.
Agree. He's worked with the Mayor's Caucus from the day we started almost 25 years ago, and he's really a remarkable man to be able to jump into the fire, so to speak, and take on some credible issues both in the state and locally. But I think he was a fair person who really represented his organization as a person who also saw the complexities of government and everything wasn't black and white, that there was certainly a middle ground, and I think Lawrence was a champion of that.
He was. Thank you. A couple notes here for this morning. One related to the Open Meetings Act. I know that many of you are probably acutely aware that a couple weeks ago, Governor Pritzker announced that the state's public health emergency will end on May 11th, 2023, aligning with the federal government's decision to end the national public health emergency. The governor's executive order suspended the in-person quorum requirements of the Illinois Open Meetings Act and also modified the reasons for which a member can attend meetings remotely. With repealing of the disaster declaration on the 11th, the original OMA requirements will stand, which means that public bodies in Illinois, including this board and all of our OMA compliant committees and the MPO policy committee as well, will need a quorum of members physically present. So for that, this board is 12. As part of our, regional coordination role here, our quorum is 4/5 majority. We are aware that the Illinois Municipal League is pursuing amendments to the Open Meetings Act. However, upon review of the amendments, the proposed changes really just codify the public health emergency flexibility, but not broad changes that would allow for continued virtual meetings. So under OMA, if the quorum of the members of the public body is physically present, then we can request virtual participation. A member could request virtual participation if the situation meets the conditions outlined in OMA and our bylaws and would need to be approved by a majority of our board. So we have enjoyed this flexibility. I think starting in May, we will be back to as normal as we can be. I think, again, we can continue to talk about how we make sure that our meetings are most effective for the times that you are with us here. Mayor Bennett, anything you wanted to add to that?
It's been fun, but at least it's starting in May and not in the middle of January, February. So I guess we have that going for us. And I think as all of us got acclimated to virtual, which has been great, our commitment to this board is going to require in-meeting. And I think for those who may feel that they can't do that going forward, we need to know that, because we, as you know, making that trip downtown, we need a quorum to have a meeting. And the last thing you want to do is to have less than that. And we can't have a meeting, or certainly for those who do show up down there and have to turn around and go home. We almost had that situation the last time we had an open meeting or a meeting downtown. So please get yourself geared up in 2 months, because we're going to have to meet in person.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on our congressional delegation meetings that we had a couple weeks ago. I had the opportunity to go to the annual National Association of Regional Councils conference in DC to hear from our peers about what they're focused on right now to take advantage of federal infrastructure dollars, including integrating climate mitigation and resiliency into transportation planning and so much more. We also had the opportunity to meet with several members of our federal delegation and update them on our work and share our list of infrastructure priority projects for competitive funds that'll be available over the next few years. Our delegation was incredibly pleased to see the booklet and appreciated having a consensus project list that they could reference in their conversations with USDOT. I just wanted to also thank publicly Tim McMahon, our senior federal affairs staff, who assisted in leading these convenings over the past year, and also congratulate him as he moves on to a new role at the Illinois Department of Transportation as the Bureau Chief of Federal Affairs. So we will have a contact at IDOT who's focused on similar goals and objectives, but we sincerely appreciate all of his efforts and coordination over the past, I think, 6 years. On the state side, I recently met with DuPage County Chair Deb Conroy and the new County Board Vice Chair in Kendall County, Scott Gengler. We are excited to work with new county leadership to advance regional priorities, including the Greater Chicagoland Economic Partnership. We've had a number of meetings with the General Assembly leadership and committee chairs to discuss our state legislative priorities and provide them with key updates on our initiatives underway, including the PART report. As we've shared in the past, funding to support implementation of the Regional Planning Act is our top state priority this year. Our state team is going to provide an update with our work to file a bill in advance advance this priority this session. We do have a bill that was filed this morning or yesterday on the Senate side or on the House side. So we're excited to share that with you. And I know that John and Kasha will cover that a little bit later on our agenda here. But as this legislation takes shape, the purpose really is to fund all of the responsibilities that CMAP was originally created with the hopes of addressing housing, the environment, climate, things that aren't related to transportation like drinking water, and really round out sort of comprehensive nature of our work here at CMAP. So also on our agenda this morning, you'll be reviewing and approving, we hope, the proposed draft 2024 budget. And I think that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Erin. And as we move along with that bill downstate to fund us, obviously we have start from day one, as Frank well knows, to get funding for this agency. We were mandated by the state to create it, but they never gave us the funds to do it. This looks like the best shot so far. Actually, it's the first time we've really had a bill introduced to do it permanently to fund us. So, Erin, please let us know what we can do as members to contacting our state reps, state senators, and hopefully we can get the support of other organizations behind us to get permanent funding. I think what's happened certainly over COVID, over the last 2.5 years, what this agency has done to stand everybody up and to go forward with how the future of this region is going to be. And I think we've been acknowledged of that. We have been complimented about that, but again, show me the money, and that's really been the story from day one. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a real thing coming forward. And please, again, send out that bill to all the members so we know what bill number it is and what's in the bill. So let's have an educated background to in talking to our representatives. But I'm hoping this is finally going to be it. So.
Yeah, no, thank you. We will certainly have talking points and appreciate your support, bill numbers moving forward, and happy to talk with you one-on-one about how we see these funds really being utilized to achieve the letter of the law that the state authorized us to accomplish. So with that, just as we move on to committee reports, I think we didn't have an update here for this, a verbal update, but I just wanted to note that included in your agenda for informational purposes is a report from the Climate Committee that includes an annual overview of their work this past year.
Any comments on the Climate Committee report? None being, we'll move on to the main purpose of this meeting. That's our comprehensive budget and work plan. Aaron and Peter are going to present.
Yes, that is correct. I'm going to kick us off here. So we do have a short presentation on CMAP's proposed FY 2024 budget and regional work plan. But last month we shared highlights from the work plan in a video that's posted to our website for reference. But before we get into the details of the budget, I did want to take a moment here to explain where the money comes from and where it goes. So much of our program funding comes from the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration through IDOT under the Unified Work Program, or otherwise known as UWP. Of that funding, we grant $6.3 million to our UWP partner agencies. That number does include local match. Peter will share the breakdown of the funding by agency and how the funds are primarily spent in just a moment here. The other portion of our budget uses those federal dollars on our MPO required functions and the management of these required federal plans. The Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is our On to 2050 plan, the 30-year plan for our region that includes policy research and development, transportation and socioeconomic modeling. The Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, the region's 5-year agenda of surface transportation projects, which includes all of the federally funded projects for the region. The administration of the annual Unified Work Program, or the list of the transportation planning projects and activities underway here. It also supports the programming of these federal funds, the Surface Transportation Program, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Improvement Program, the Transportation Alternatives Program, and in state fiscal year 2024, our new Carbon Reduction Program. As a reminder, we program these funds through our regional call for projects, which is open now for communities to apply through your local planning liaisons and your councils of governments. The Illinois Department of Transportation contributes helps to contribute 20% of the required match to unlock these federal dollars, which have doubled under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. But it also supports CMAP's work on behalf of the region, including our valuable planning, technical assistance, our data and analysis for our partner agencies, and our communications and engagement work. As we've mentioned previously, this budget reflects a more sustainable funding sources, which is one of our key operational goals in our strategic direction, diversifying our funding sources to provide more sustainable revenues. In order to meet our increased local match for federal funding, local contributions have increased and now make up about $1.6 million in our annual budget. This budget reflects increases for the counties, the RTA service boards, and local municipalities. We plan to increase the local municipal contributions at a manageable increments over the next 5 years to continue to build that sustainable source to meet the region's obligation for federal funds. Contributions also help support CMAP's planning and data and analytical resources. And finally, this budget also funds important work in transportation, regional economy, and climate through funding from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, MacArthur Foundation, the Chicago Community Trust, and a 3-year partnership that kicks off this year with Cook County to study tax policy. We'll continue to apply for competitive grants and philanthropic dollars throughout the year, really to support the work that just doesn't fall under our UWP programmatic initiatives here. But that funding would also really help relieve some of the pressure to seek alternative funds as well. I'm going to hand it over to Peter.
Great, thank you, Erin. So good morning, everyone, first of all.
Good morning.
Erin alluded to, our budget is organized into 2 primary pieces that help fund operation and work that CMAP and its partners perform. First and foremost, we have the biggest source of CMAP's operating funds, the Unified Work Program, so UWP for short. Today, we are asking approval of the UWP budget, forecasted to be $29.6 million, of which CMAP will receive $23.3 million. Moreover, $741,000 is set aside for the safe and complete streets, and the remainder going to our UWP partners. The UWP serves the majority of CMAP's operational needs, but also serves another purpose as it provides additional funding to our partner agencies in completing very necessary regional work. As you can see in this slide, CMAP works together with our partners during the UWP planning process to best allocate available funds to partner projects, but also responsibly budgeting for our own needs. Today's budget aims to pass through about $6.3 million in funding to the Council of Mayors, CDOT, METRA, CPA, PACE, and Will County. One thing to note is that the county's portion varies year over year as they rotate for this funding availability. Coming up next year, we will take a deeper dive into the CMAP's portion of the UWP, as well as how it fits into the overall budget that we present to you all yearly here. Here we can see a breakdown of CMAP's operation funding sources. Currently balanced our expenditures at about $29 million, which is consistent with previous year's budget that was presented to the board. As you can see here, we are forecasting about 75% of our funding sources being derived from the United States Department of Transportation through IDOT, mainly the UWP source we just briefly spoke about. The remaining sources vary from local contributions, around 5.5%, regional infrastructure accelerator program, philanthropic support, ARPA, and so much more, as Erin mentioned previously. The budget includes an additional $1.1 million in additional planning funds recently awarded to us through IDOT. We received word recently that CMAP, along with all MPOs in the state, will be awarded additional planning funds. While this award is for fiscal year 24, there's a vision that IDOT and Federal Highways will award these additional funds for a series of years in an effort to increase the sub-allocation of these funds. So how does this translate onto the other side of the budget? Consistent with prior year, a majority of CMAP's planned expenditures are for personnel costs. We're forecasting to be around 46.6%. However, if you look at a comparative standpoint, this is only a slight increase between budgeted years. Overall, just like the previous year's budget, the projected expenditures are going to remain consistent this upcoming fiscal year. Moreover, contractual expenses see a slight increase of $718,000, or around 8%. Commodities see a $1.6 million decrease, but that's mainly due to the Topia data purchase that happened this fiscal year. And the main driver there is that expenditures happen when deliverables happen, and there are currently no scheduled for fiscal. However, the board will see this amount increase for fiscal year 25 when that budget is presented, as there are deliverables scheduled for that fiscal year. The expenses, as well as other categories, remain consistent year over year, with internal operations focus on IT infrastructure updates and the continuance of our ERP implementation. Next slide. So finally, here we can see all facets of where CMAP's budget touches, whether it's developing and implementing the ONTO 2050 plan, collaboratively facilitating dialogue between our government partners, serving as the region's data source, and most importantly for our staff, they'll help ensure staff retention, pay wellness, infrastructure upgrades, and so on. So we can say that CMAP's budget is all encompassing. But here, I'll send it back to Erin.
Great. And just I noted that Peter was breaking up a little bit at the end here. I'll just reemphasize those last couple sentences here, is that, collaboratively facilitating dialogue between government partners, serving as the region's data source, and most importantly for our staff, investing in a multitude of operational benefits will help ensure our staff retention, pay wellness, infrastructure upgrades, and so on. So, Leanne, did you have a question?
Yeah, whenever are we at questions yet on this?
Sure, sounds good. I just have a few more things.
Yeah, that's fine. I can wait.
Okay, sounds good. So our annual budget and work plan is aligned to our strategic direction, which outlines three strategic areas of focus: transportation, climate, and our regional economic competitiveness. Much of the work in our FY24 work plan tackles tough issues facing our region and advances priorities in these three areas, as well as at the intersection of these areas. We're strongly committed to addressing traffic safety crisis by reducing the devastating rise in traffic fatalities that we've seen across our region over the past few years. Through the Safe Travel for All Roadmap or STAR program and the recently approved grant through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we will continue to work with our county partners to develop safety action plans for all of the counties. In the transportation area, the plan of action for regional transit will continue this year and into 24 and potentially beyond. This work will set the state of legislative recommendations that ensure long-term financial viability of comprehensive and coordinated regional public transportation system as required by state law. In FY24, you will also continue to see us address regional flooding and helping to build more resilient transportation infrastructure. We'll also address air and water quality issues with comprehensive plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and manage water quality. At the intersection of our transportation and climate work, our carbon reduction program will help put an equitable electric vehicle network in place and tackle transportation emissions mitigation. Our economic work will continue to support the regional Chicagoland Economic Partnership to help our region work as one to attract industries and build on our strengths as the freight hub of the nation. And our ADA planning and improving accessibility also remains a high priority for the region and CMAP's work plan. Pursuing equity remains ever present in all facets of our work and our planning for a stronger and more financially secure transit system, in our climate resiliency planning and investment decisions, and in our safety planning, and so much more. So in summary, you can see represented on this slide, our work is diverse and wide-ranging. Guided by Onto 2050, CMAP's annual work plan and budget, we collaborate and build consensus. We research and use data to inform our decision-making and policies. This includes producing data snapshots, a new land use inventory and regional greenhouse gas emissions data, and inclusive growth analyses for the region as well. We support and deliver robust communication and engagement around our plans, data, and resources so that people know that they're available for them to use. And we support within our communities through direct technical assistance, trainings, and other resources. This budget enables us to continue our work on behalf of the 7 counties, 284 municipalities, and 8.6 million residents that call Northeastern Illinois home, and helps us create a stronger, more resilient place to live. It also advances the 2050 goals of inclusive growth, prioritized investment, and resilience. So today we are seeking board approval of the FY 2024 budget and work plan. As a reminder, this budget moves on to the PO Policy Committee, as well as the Transportation Committee for final approvals here in the coming months. We will also be concurrently sharing the UWP portion of the budget with IDOT for its review and approval so that contracts can begin to be drafted with effective dates of July 1, 2023. With that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions? Leanne? You're muted.
Thanks. Actually, just a quick question. I think, Erin, you answered kind of one of them, because I think it's slightly a unique nuance or new this year that you're wrapping up the UWP within the board budget vote. Usually they're 2 separate votes. So you did say that we will still be taking the UWP to the MPO for discussion, and just kind of, I just wanted to sort of flag that and confirm that. So I think that's good, but it is a different way that you're proposing to do it this year by wrapping it all up in one vote. Usually they're separate votes.
I'm sorry. Oh, wrapping what up in one vote, the UWP and the.
Well,
annual budget
usually it's
motion?
two, even if the board, it's usually a separate conversation. There's one vote on the board, the CMAP budget, sorry, the CMAP budget, I should say. And then the UWP is a separate one. We're wrapping it in. Sounds like we're just wrapping it into one vote this time. You're wrapping it into one vote this time. And you did confirm that it was going to the MPO because that was my original question, but.
Yeah,
wanted
I
to
think
clarify that.
we've had a couple to move the process up per IDOT to get them the draft early enough so that they can get the contracts executed. But this follows the same pattern as we did last year in terms of vote at the board, vote at the MPO policy committee, and it's brought to transportation committee as well.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion in that we accept the budget and work plan. Is there a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved, Diane.
Second, Sheehan.
Moved and seconded. Again, any further questions? Call the roll, Aaron?
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Beal,
Yes.
President Brawley,
Yes.
Mayor Darch,
Yes.
Paul Goodrich,
Yes.
Jim Healy,
Aye.
Nina Itamudia,
Yes.
Mayor Noak,
Yes.
President Reinbold,
Yes.
Mayor Rotering,
Yes.
Stefan Schaefer,
Yes.
Carolyn Scott,
Yes.
Ann Sheehan,
Yes.
Matt Walsh, and Diane Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, moving on to next items are informational items. Plan of action for the part report update. Laura, are you going to do that?
Absolutely. Hello, board. Happy to be here this month to give you your monthly update on the work we've been doing for the plan of action for regional transit. You can go to the next slide, and even to the next slide. One of the places that we've started is thinking about how we want to guide this work. So we have started to put together some principles to guide our recommendations and receiving input on that as we move forward. So wanted to make sure that we shared those with you. The key principles as we're moving forward is really to focus on ensuring the financial viability of the system. So this is not a one-time, let's find a lot of funding to place into the system, but really the discussions and recommendations we want to have are so that our transit system can be financially viable from here forward. We also are thinking about the scope of the work and really identifying recommendations where the state in particular has a role. Since this is state legislation that's been brought to us, we are looking about what the recommendations are for the state role. So again, there's many places where we can be working with the service boards and the RTA and the federal government, the state, but really trying to think about where the state legislature has a role in implementing these solutions to help guide our work. We're also talking about not going back to where we were, but rebuilding a stronger system. So really kind of guiding our work in that space. And then working with our state legislative sponsors, it's been very important to us and very important to them that we center the users of the system, that this isn't transit for transit's sake, but really thinking about the users. And to be bold, we really don't want to take a lot of things off the table from the very beginning. We want to be able to have discussions and talk through different suggestions and ideas. So again, we've asked all of the people that we're talking with, the board included, to be bold in the conversations that we're having so that we can look at all possibilities. I think another important thing for us to understand as we move through this with all of our different stakeholders is that this isn't a moment where the transit agencies alone can solve this crisis. We are looking at again, a fiscal cliff in 2026, and just being able to cut service is not going to be able to move it forward. And it's definitely not going to meet the principles that we just talked about at centering the users. And if that spiral happens, we look at decreased ridership and then transit revenues, and we're right back into cutting service. So we really think this is a moment that we need to ground everyone, that this isn't some place where we can be cutting service as an answer, because that is unacceptable to our goals from the 2050, and I think of many of our partners and stakeholders. So we really need to look beyond that. So what we've been doing over the past month and a half, as we've been talking to you guys, yeah, no, absolutely, this slide works, is thinking about our scope. So when we have looked at the legislation, it has a very large scope for us, if you can recall, we really wanted to look at what we think makes sense to do deeper dive and have discussion. So thinking about what we need to research, what the questions are, where are some of the answers that meet these principles that we've been discussing. So you'll notice that, again, we've had these kind of 3 buckets we've been talking about. What is the system, how we pay for it, and then how we implement it. And the topics on the left have been shared with you before. And so what we've been doing now is thinking about what are the examples of the policies underneath that, or what are some of the context and discussion that needs to happen regarding each of those topics. And so what we've been trying to do is really validate with different stakeholders. We'd like to validate with you and then refine these as we move forward to our next step, which would be to do the research and coming up with the recommendations. So we're bringing all of this information to you, to the MPO, to the committees that we work with, and different stakeholders to, again, to really validate and refine the work that we want to take forward. So if you'll notice here in the system we talk about reliable bus service, but then if you go to the examples, it's really about how can we support and improve bus priority infrastructure? What is the different automated enforcement that might be helpful in those spaces to bus lanes and stops? What are the public sector capacity at roadway agencies that could be improved to really deal with these issues? So we kind of can see where we're taking the next deeper dive into these areas in universal accessibility, operational efficiencies, which again, we want to work with the service boards directly on as well, and have started to do that work. And then safety and security, as you guys have mentioned, what are the different programs? What are best practices? What are different case studies in order to support and improve safety and security on our systems? So those are the system we want, and then we'll go on to the how to pay for it. So here, again, we're talking about many of the things that were actually called out in the legislation explicitly, but also looking at the new revenues, but also the system generated revenues, talking about fair policy and what we'd like to see in that space. Operational structural savings. So here again, we could think about potential savings with the system and efficiencies, and again, working with the service boards and RTA in that space. The fare box recovery ratio, you'll see both in the how to pay for it and in the how to implement it section, because it really does have kind of a space in both of those. We know that's something that might be moving this state legislative session, and we understand that, but we still want to make sure that we're working and looking at what are the really kind of the performance metrics. So again, this was used before as a performance metrics. And as I think we've learned through COVID, it's not the appropriate performance metrics for our region, and it's not going to work effectively. And so we want to look at what does that mean? So what are the different improvements in that space that we want to be addressing? And then again, federal funding, this is less of, again, in that principles that we had brought forward is less of thinking that the federal government is going to actually bail us out again, but more of how do we leverage the funding that we already have in the transportation space and transportation dollars to look at how that might improve our transit system. So we want to make sure we look at that as well, specifically in the ADA paratransit support where we have a lot of cost issues. And next on the how to implement it, this is really to look at the governance structures and funding distributions, looking at different case studies. We have the Eno Center for Transportation who is working with us to bring best practices and other case studies from around the country about how we might improve the implementation of our system. So again, here in this area, we talk about the allocation, the fare box recovery ratio, and system governance. So we're trying to take that next step down and validate that with you, our stakeholders, and we're excited to work with that. So interested to get your input as we move forward. Also, since we last met, we had our first steering committee. Again, the steering committee was brought through to us through the legislation. We were excited to bring that group here together on January 18th. At that meeting, we did a lot of introductions since it's the new space for all of these people, and some people have worked together and some are new to this conversation. We did background and history discussions. So really people understand we aren't starting from scratch. You've been with us through this, but a lot of other people are new to this. We wanted to make sure we provided some good background and history for everyone. And then we talked through these draft scope items. So getting their input of where else we need to refine this or add or subtract within the time period that we have. The next slide is actually just to, have you guys remember who's on the steering committee membership. As Aaron mentioned, we're very sad to lose Lawrence Masal's input into this, but we're still working with the Civic Federation. They have noted that they'd like to continue to be involved with us, and we're excited to have their participation. Again, the legislation asks that we have different civic community organizations. We've added academia to this list, and we also have brought that we need to have geographic diversity to this conversation and racial diversity to this membership. So that's something we made sure that happened throughout this work. They will be meeting again in March, and we will be actively working on doing these research questions and white papers in the meantime. I think it's also important to note that, as I mentioned, Eno is working with us on the governance. They have already conducted 20+ interviews with different stakeholders, some of you, some of our MPO members, and other people throughout the region. We're doing state legislative outreach. This is not something we think we're going to be able to bring to the state legislator in the governor's office January of next year, and they're going to be able to move immediately if we don't do the pre-work and have conversations this year with our different stakeholders. We, as much as we'll be excited to pass this report and set of recommendations with you at the end of this year, the real success is having the state legislature act on it so that we see the improvements and see the recommendations move forward. So that's something we're focused on as well. Again, as we said, many of us are doing research and analysis to bring different white papers and different policy positions to this group. We'll be hosting discussion groups, again, with different stakeholders, different members of the steering committee, that we can continue to refine and move forward on these recommendations. We're also planning focus groups as we talk about engagement. We want to bring different voices to the table that can provide information and input. So we'll be doing some focus groups later this spring and summer. And we continue to meet significantly with the RTA service boards, do presentations and coordinate with them. So again, that we're all working towards a common goal of improving our fiscal system for the transit system. And I believe that that is it. We have launched our website. So there is a web page on the CMAP website for information for external users, and look forward to getting any input or comments that you have today.
Oh, looks like President Darch has a question.
I do. Thanks, Laura, for that report. I just wondered, I'm assuming all the meetings of the steering committee are open meetings, and I wondered if you could post a list of their actual meetings. As a person who's, I'm appreciating the input that staff is giving to those of us who are sort of liaisoning this between CMAP and the steering committee. But if I had an opportunity to observe one of those meetings or more of them, I think it would be helpful. I don't know if others feel the same way. So I would love it if you could post ahead of time what their meeting schedule is. And I don't know if there's going to be a Zoom link for the next couple of months or what, but if that's possible, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor Noak?
Yeah, I also had a comment about steering committee meetings. I did have some concern that the first steering committee meeting was held at the same exact time as the PACE board meeting, which limited potential input from anyone who may have to participate in that, which limits, our diversity of the input. So if we can avoid having steering committee meetings on any of the various transit agency board meetings, I think that would be good.
Yeah, we unfortunately realized that after the fact, and we have all of the dates and times set with the steering committee members. So I do appreciate that that is an oversight that we had, and we'll work with you, Mayor, and the PACE board to try to limit or share information as best as we can. And I will be going to the PACE board meeting next week to talk about this. So apologize on that, but definitely have those dates on those steering committee members' schedules through the rest of the year. So we'll continue to work to make sure that we have the information cross-referenced with anyone who can't be there.
Well, certainly, if our goal is to have diversity of the voices, having steering committee meetings on a date when anyone who has to participate in PACE's process would significantly limit the input on the steering committee. So I think it's a very significant thing that needs to be avoided. And also, when we're looking at groups that we're going to focus on, let's make sure that we have a regional diversity of groups to focus on as well.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you. moving on to the legislative update. John?
Thank you very much. Good morning. Today, I'll provide an update of some of our recent legislative work in the General Assembly. As Aaron noted, and as we've shared with you before, our top state legislative priority this session will be securing funding to support the full implementation of the Regional Planning Act, CMAP's enabling statute. The statute provides that CMAP shall receive funding to carry out the tasks of the Regional Planning Act, which is much more comprehensive than our funding currently reflects. With more flexible funding, we also will be better positioned to help the region take advantage of the federal funding opportunities that become available beyond transportation funds. We've had very productive conversations with legislative leadership and other members of the General Assembly. Senator Ram Bilivalam and Representative Marty Moylan have agreed to sponsor the legislation that will appropriate $10 million to CMAP to grow our ability to fulfill the Regional Planning Act objectives and to promote improved access to federal funds. The Senate bill introduction deadline is Friday and the House deadline is next Friday. We'll have legislation in each chamber. And yes, just late yesterday, Senator Bilivalam introduced the Senate bill as Senate Bill 1429. We'll provide you all with the relevant bill information as soon as it becomes available. We know this has been a long-standing priority of the CMAP Board, and we're looking forward to working with you to advocate this bill through the legislative process. Like Aaron mentioned, we hope you'll be able to express your support to your legislators as well as to your respective COGs. And we'll provide you with all the talking points and materials you need to do so. We look forward to working with the board to keep you apprised of our progress at future meetings, and we will continue to provide you with regular legislative updates about this and other legislative activities. If there are any questions, we're happy to entertain them.
Any questions of John? John, through Aaron or you directly, please let me know how this moves along so I can make some phone calls too, especially to leadership, that the thing doesn't die in rules right off the bat, because that's usually where they go to. Right?
We've had conversations with the Senate leadership on this already, and they suggested that it be an appropriations bill, move through the appropriations process. Probably won't move much beyond that, but that's a way to get it started to be included in this year's budget. So we will keep you informed. We will prepare the young materials, and we are going to depend on all of you to contact your legislators to help this become a reality.
Yeah, thanks, John, for your work. And again, this is going to set up as permanent funding, is it not?
Well, this year it's going to be it's a one-time appropriation, or it's going to be an annual appropriation, we hope, going forward.
Okay, that was the problem we had obviously in the past when we went to them. They would not certainly put it in stone, and that, as we had conversations in the past, it kind of leaves us up in the air. They have a bad year, we don't get funding, and we've set our budgets up for X, Y, and Z, and that funding's not going to be there. So it's precarious, but if we can start the ball now, and probably have to go down there every year now, and after that, and convince them that the funding is necessary on a permanent basis.
Right. Well, at least next year. The problem is the appropriations process is such that they deal in 2-year cycles. So it's going to be an ongoing effort. And I don't know whether if they put it in the Regional Planning Act, whether it's really considered an appropriation or not. There's no requirement that it be done. So I think we have to get the money specifically authorized and appropriated to CMAP.
All right, great. Thank you for your work. Any questions of John?
I just wanted to, as Mayor Bennett, one small anecdote that I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with the Region 5 FEMA director here in Northeastern Illinois. And one of the things that they noted, is that they have over the next couple of years, $1.2 billion in resiliency, hazard mitigation funding available. They were really seeking for us to come in with a regional proposal. And one of my challenges I mentioned to them was that I don't have match money, in many ways, shapes, or forms. I think that is leaving federal dollars on the table without us having that sort of additional capacity to be able to sort of say, no, this is what the region needs to help address its flooding across Northeastern Illinois. So just a reminder that there are federal agencies speaking to us about leveraging local resources, but that all of this funding that we are pursuing is to directly support our local counties, our communities across this region. You know, CMAP doesn't build anything. So as much as we can help our communities access additional resources for planning and infrastructure, you know, that is something that I think would be a huge value, just given all of the resources that are coming and available for us the next few years.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to, is there any other business before the board? None being, public comment?
Yes, I'm Pep. How you doing, Mayor Bennett?
I'm fine. How are you, my friend?
I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. How you
Welcome.
doing?
Garland.
All right. Just want you to know 15 more days countdown to my birthday. I'll be 57. And just want you to know that the way you're doing so well. And like Heather and I, our biggest concern is like when RTA said that they might have a problem in 2026. If you need any little suggestions while I'm here, we got the same low situation here too. So if there's anything that you could help us, if you need some help from us, just call us and then we could give you a little suggestions what DART has here when we go there, and then I'll bring it up to the Des Moines Access Advisory Board on it. If you have anything that you need, if you need little more resources here, just call us and we'll be able to help you along the way as a neighboring state, because I know what the years will be. We don't know, so just to keep you posted on it. If there's any changes or something drastic, just call us and we'll be glad to assist you, because I know it's going to be a challenge down the years come. So we'll be ready just in case if you need some assistance.
Appreciate it, Garland.
All right.
Thank you. Aaron,
All
did you
right.
mention about that? Aaron, did you mention about the recent grant we received?
You know what? I think I did, but just sort of glossed over it a little bit. But we received a nearly $5 million grant to address safety planning across the region. And one of the key points of that I'll just share is that by having every county have a safety action plan, it will unlock opportunities for all of the municipalities and the counties to apply for hard infrastructure safety dollars. So we're very excited about that. We are waiting anxiously to sign on the dotted line to get those projects moving forward. But needless to say, my team has already been writing procurement documents, scoping documents, working with the county DOT directors directly, who are providing match, as well as IDOT providing match for their system analysis for this portion. And I think too, one of the things that IDOT asked that their funding be used for is engagement and thinking about how inequitable some of the fatalities rates are across our region as well. So we are very excited to get this work started, and it's sort of the culmination of full works of our deeper dive into safety action planning here.
Great, good news. Any other items for the board? Okay, we will meet again next month on March 8th. And for those on the executive committee, once you get off this call, please get onto the executive committee website or Zoom call. With that in mind, Aaron, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Bold, Frank.
Second, Oak.
Got it, Aaron?
Yep.
Call
Mayor
roll.
Bennett,
Aye.
Frank Beal,
Aye.
President Brawley,
Aye.
Mayor Darch,
Aye.
Paul Goodrich,
Aye.
Jim Healy,
Aye.
Ina Adam,
Aye.
Mayor Noak,
Aye.
President Reinbold,
Aye.
Mayor Rodering,
Aye.
Stephen Schaefer,
Aye.
Carolyn Schofield,
Aye.
Ann Sheehan, Matt Walsh, Diane Williams.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you all. Have a great day. The sun's out. See you soon.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Aye.
I thank you.
Thank you.